Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing ways you can use a sledgehammer to train the 4 ways that you don't normally train at all in terms of the way your wrist can move when you are training with the barbell. In order to do this, we're going to first talk about the 6 different ways your hands can move, and then we're going to talk about 3 concentric movements and 1 isometric movement that you can use the sledgehammer to train. Although this is not necessarily a limited thing, the important characteristic of the sledgehammer is that it is asymmetrically loaded when you're holding it in one hand, meaning there's more weight on one side than the other, which allows your hand to be challenged in different ways. Okay, so why is this relevant? Well, if you follow my channel, you see I do a lot of one-arm lifts like bent press and one-arm snatch. And specifically, when you are holding a barbell in one hand, your hand can fail in a bunch of different ways, and so you need to be strong in all those ways in order to be able to, kind of attack the weight and control the weight, because if you can't control the weight at your hand, all the failure goes to your elbow, and then it goes to your shoulder if the elbow can't handle it, and so on and so forth, until it has to move down a lever, so it becomes more and more difficult, and so it'd be better just to be stronger in the hand. Okay, so first of all, the 2 ways that you commonly actually get some stimulus with a barbell is flexion and extension. So flexion, we're coming like this, and extension, we're coming like this. Notice we can do these very easily when we have 2 hands on the handle here. And so this is indicative of the fact that you actually are gonna get some stimulus for this whenever you're using a barbell, just by controlling the weight, especially if you're not using wrist straps. But your hands cannot twist or rotate like this because you can't bend a barbell, probably. And so what this means is there's 4 other ways your hands can move that do not get trained when you're using a barbell. So the first is radial deviation. So that's twisting towards the thumb and moving up. Similarly, ulnar deviation. And so these both do not get trained because you cannot twist one way or the other, right? I can move my elbow, but the hand's going nowhere. You cannot do this while you are holding 2 hands on a barbell. Secondly, if we hold the hand straight up, we have pronation, so turning over, and then turning back, supination. And so this twisting is important for not helicoptering, for example, in the bench press, because when you're down here and you're twisting and the hand's going one way or the other, your ability to control it is somewhat limited by pronator and supinator. If you're into arm wrestling, by the way, radial deviation is commonly called your riser muscle and is important for arm wrestling. So let's get into some of the concentric movements. So for radial deviation, the concentric movement we're going to talk about is just doing like a curl with the weight. You want to try and keep a strong grip on the shaft. And it's important to note, you can overload this by moving further away from the weight. Notice this looks a lot easier for me. This is a bit challenging for me. I can barely bring it past parallel. And this, for example, is impossible. It actually increases exponentially as you move down the shaft, which means you probably only ever need 1 sledgehammer, except for where you're really strong. And so, your radial deviation tends to be weaker than your ulnar deviation, which same idea. You just grip the weight, you try and maintain a solid grip because you don't want to be ungripping and regripping. You want to keep your grip tight and then curl the weight up. You can pause at the top. It's important to note that you are hitting a particular angle. So for example, if we were to do this lying on a bench, we would be hitting a different angle slightly. And so these are kind of the first 2. And the next one is just kind of a windshield wiper movement where you are going to go from pronating to supinating, right? So these are the 3 concentric movements. Now it's important to note, for example, if you manage to rotate like this, you can hit the angle differently because it's going to be hardest when the weight is parallel. And so if the weight's parallel at a different angle, it's going to result in a different stimulus. And so you can work around with the ways like this. And let's talk about an isometric movement, because commonly you don't actually want your wrist to move when you are using it in a lift. You actually want it to stay still. And so a good example of this is if you do a curl with the offset loading. So the loading's asymmetric, and when I'm down here, you'll notice it's radial deviation that's keeping the weight in the same spot, right? But when I come here, Now it's my pronator, right? So this is pronation. This is radial deviation here, right? This is now pronation. And then when I get to the top of the range of motion, now it is an ulnar deviation in order to keep the weight in the same spot. So when I curl, the weight transfers through, a bunch of different spots and is forcing my hand to respond dynamically. And so this type of training can be particularly good, but it is not a concentric type of training. It is isometric. Now it's concentric on the bicep, but the stimulus is not going to be on the bicep here, right? Or primarily, you're going to be gated by the strength of your hand and your wrist and your ability to do this. And it's only 8 or 12 pounds, and you overload by just moving your hand further away from the weight, which is going to increase the length of the lever and make it considerably more difficult. It also exponentially becomes more difficult. So you might notice like the first inch is really easy to get the first inch away. And then the second inch is harder and harder and harder, right? Like I cannot control the weight with it in the middle, but I can a little bit back here. And so something like this. And so thinking about it in this way with this offset loading is a very useful tool. You can also offset load a little bit with kettlebells, but that's gonna be another video. I hope this has been informative and interesting for forearm training, which is very important for the one-arm lifts. If you found it interesting, entertaining, or whatnot, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, the usual YouTube algorithm stuff. And other than that, have a good one.